Chapter 1. The Cropped Portrait. Christmas Eve should shimmer with tradition. The scent of cloves and cinnamon, the clink of glasses, the hush of snow settling outside like a secret. But that year, the air in my parents' house was heavy. Too heavy. The tree glowed like a showroom model, every ornament matching, every ribbon curated. My sister twirled in a designer dress, presenting her children like royalty. My father, ever the host, poured expensive scotch for the men, while my mother praised the roast she didn't cook. And me? I stood at the edge of the room like an interloper in my own story, until I saw it. Above the fireplace, nestled between two garlands, hung the portrait, a new one. Large, stylized, professionally staged. My family, laughing, candid, perfectly lit. But not all of them. I stared, counted, recounted. Me. I wasn't there. At first I thought it was an oversight. Maybe I blinked during the photo shoot. Maybe it was just for the nuclear family. But then I remembered. I was at that shoot. I remember the click of the shutter, the way my nephew clung to my arm, the way my mother brushed lint off my shoulder like I was a museum piece needing polishing. But in this version, I was missing. Not just cropped, replaced. Where I had once stood was a tall lamp. Its warm glow ironically fell over my sister's perfectly curled hair. A literal spotlight, stealing my space. The rest of the room carried on. Gifts were exchanged, stories told, laughter spilled like champagne. But I was still frozen, heart racing, eyes burning. No one mentioned the change. No one looked guilty. That was the worst part. My absence was so accepted, so normalized, that it didn't require justification. The polished holiday facade dulled my senses. My mother gave my sister a diamond bracelet, our grandmother's. My father handed her husband a deed to a vintage car. I received a scented candle and a book I already owned. No one said it aloud, but the message rang clear. I was not part of the inner circle. I was a satellite, a helper, a holiday obligation. My presence was tolerated, but not remembered, and now, not even pictured. Later that night, I quietly checked the family group chat. The portrait had been posted weeks ago. Heart emojis. Comments about how beautiful the family looked. No one noticed my absence. Or worse, they did, and they approved. In some families, photos tell truths. In mine, they told convenient lies. Like the one that said we were close, that we shared, that we cared. But really, the photo said everything that wasn't said to my face. You're not one of us. Not anymore. Some relatives would later claim it was to simplify the composition, that I had been standing too far out of frame, or the image was too cluttered. But I know the truth. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about power. And I was about to take mine back. Chapter 2. The Invisible Woman. Before they erased me from the photo, they'd already been erasing me for years. It didn't happen all at once. That's not how invisibility works. It's gradual. Death by 1,000 tiny omissions. A forgotten birthday here. A missing invitation there. Achievements that went unnoticed, even when they made the news. I remember when I got my first art exhibition in the city. My sister called it a hobby, and my father nodded like I'd taken up knitting. No flowers, no visit, no mention. My sister, Chloe, was always the favorite. She cried louder. She needed more, and needing more in my family was a golden ticket. I, on the other hand, was the strong one, the helper, the fixer, the one who doesn't mind. I minded. I minded so much I had ulcers by 17. But no one asked. They didn't notice when I paid for my own college. They didn't notice when I lost my job during the pandemic and lived off ramen and pride. They didn't ask how I managed my medical bills when I broke my ankle and refused to come home. Because coming home meant shame. It meant failure. But the biggest betrayal wasn't emotional. It was financial. A week after that Christmas Eve, I couldn't shake the photo. It gnawed at me. I started digging, not just into memories, but into paper. I requested property records, checked archived legal files, asked questions I was told not to ask, and then I found it. My grandfather had left me something, a house. A small one, yes, just on the edge of town, but it was meant for me. Not in vague terms, in writing, in his will. The problem? I never received it. My parents told me he hadn't left anything behind, that everything had been handled quietly, but the deed said otherwise. The house was mine, had been for 5 years, and yet it had been rented out. Every month the rent was collected, not by me, by them. They used my inheritance to pay off credit cards, fund Chloe's kitchen renovation, and cover my mother's boutique therapy sessions. My name wasn't just missing from the photo, it was missing from my own future. In many families, the independent child becomes a convenient scapegoat. You don't invite her to the will reading because she doesn't need anything. You don't give her the heirlooms because she wouldn't care. But what you're really doing is rewriting the story, editing her out because she doesn't fit your narrative of need, of loyalty, of submission. They told me I was strong. But that's not why they erased me. They erased me because I saw them clearly. They erased me because I didn't play along. They always forget the strong ones, a friend once said, because they think you'll survive the forgetting. That night, I stood outside the house that should have been mine, keyless, watching the light flicker in someone else's window. My house. My name on the deed. My identity, stolen in silence. But I wasn't silent anymore. It was time to become visible. By force, if necessary. Chapter 3. The Envelope. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's a printer humming in the middle of the night. A notary's signature on cream-colored paper. The soft creak of a lawyer's chair as he leans forward and says, "You have a strong case." It's cold, clinical, and devastating. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I gathered. Bank records, lease agreements, notarized copies of the original will, emails my father forgot to delete, rental contracts with my parents' names as the beneficiaries, each one a nail in the coffin of their defense. The evidence stacked like bricks, solid and irrefutable. I was building a fortress they couldn't climb over or knock down. And then, I placed it all into an envelope. A simple manila envelope. Inside, a letter from my lawyer asserting my rightful ownership of the house. A demand for back rent, 5 years' worth. A formal cease and desist, and a final line that cut like glass. You have 7 days to vacate the premises or legal proceedings will commence. I didn't mail it. I hand-delivered it. Christmas morning. The room looked almost identical to the one on Christmas Eve. The same garland. The same overpriced centerpiece. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't there to be tolerated anymore. I wasn't there to sit quietly in the corner, smiling through gritted teeth. I walked in wearing red, power color, not holiday cheer, and placed the envelope on the table between the sugar cookies and the satin ribbon scraps. My father glanced at it but didn't touch it. My mother looked puzzled, as if the paper might be a late gift. My sister raised an eyebrow, her signature expression of contempt disguised as curiosity. "What's this?" she asked, already annoyed. "Something that belongs to me," I said, "and something that doesn't belong to you." My voice was calm, ice, not fire. They opened the envelope together. As they read, I saw the blood drain from my mother's face. My father leaned back like he'd been slapped. Chloe tried to laugh, but the sound died halfway through. There it was, in black and white. The house was mine. It had always been mine. And now they had to give it back. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a fight. It was truth, served cold and legally binding. Most people think revenge is loud, but real revenge? It's quieter than you expect. It's an envelope placed gently between 2 mugs of cocoa, heavier than any gift under the tree. It's a daughter who doesn't raise her voice, because the documents do it for her. In inheritance law, fraud can void years of false ownership. If a will is clear, and a beneficiary is denied their property, the courts do not hesitate. My parents had gambled on my silence. They lost. Later that day, after the guests had left and the dishes were cleaned, my father pulled me aside. "We're family," he said, voice cracked and desperate. "No," I replied. "You're people I used to be related to. There's a difference." And I walked out. The envelope stayed behind, like a detonator, still ticking. Chapter 4. After the fallout. Fallout doesn't arrive like thunder. It creeps in like mold, slow, silent, and devastating. After Christmas morning, the family group chat went dead. No emoji chains, no blurry brunch selfies, no recycled memes from Aunt Deb. Just a void, a black hole where family once pretended to orbit each other. I wasn't surprised. By New Year's Eve, word had spread. Not just about the envelope, but about the house. My house. The one my parents had illegally rented. The one Chloe had bragged about redecorating on a budget, not knowing the budget came from stolen inheritance. Now the tenants were moving out, their lease terminated. My lawyer had handled it. Clean. Professional. The locks were changed on January 4th. I moved in on January 6th. It wasn't much. Creaky floors, paint that peeled like sunburn, a kitchen from the 80s with yellowed tiles. But it was mine. Every square inch. I wandered room to room with a can of paint and a vengeance playlist. Each stroke of the roller felt like a reclamation. I was rewriting the walls, replacing years of theft with layers of truth. My sister tried to call once. I didn't answer. She sent a text. It didn't have to go this far. I stared at the screen. Was I supposed to feel guilty? Was I supposed to apologize for finally standing up for myself? For not accepting crumbs at the banquet table I helped build? I blocked her. My mother emailed a week later, full of concern cloaked in civility. "We were just trying to keep things simple. You're so strong. We thought you didn't care about things like money." It always comes back to that. Strong, their favorite weapon. The excuse that let them abandon me while calling it respect. But strength doesn't mean indifference. And silence isn't consent. I replied, "I care. I always did. You just stopped asking." She didn't respond. In small towns, stories spread like wildfire. At the grocery store, I felt eyes on my back. Not judgment, necessarily. Curiosity. Admiration, even. Everyone had heard about the envelope, about how the quiet daughter finally spoke up, about how the forgotten one reclaimed what was hers. They say revenge isolates you. In my case, it liberated me. I started sleeping better. I ate without stomach knots. I worked on my art again, portraits mostly, and for the first time in years, I hung my own picture in a home that couldn't be taken from me. No one visits. No one drops by just to check in. And that's fine. I don't need performative closeness. I need honesty, respect, and space. My parents had to sell their boat to pay back part of the owed rent. My sister had to cancel her kids' private dance lessons. I didn't gloat. I didn't clap. I simply let the consequences unfold. And in the silence, I heard something I hadn't heard in years. Peace. I wasn't erased. I had been reborn. Chapter 5. The New Portrait. They say revenge is a circle, that it brings you right back to the pain you started with. Maybe. But not this time. because mine didn't end in confrontation. It ended in creation. The day I finished repainting the front door of my grandfather's house, I stood there for a long moment, with the brush still in my hand. The paint was deep navy, the kind that shifts color in the light, blue by day, almost black by night. Bold, unapologetic, not trendy, not warm, but honest. Inside, the walls were bare. Not because I didn't have photos to hang, but because I was finally choosing which stories I wanted to see. For the first time in years, I had control over the frame. A week later, I began a new painting. Not for anyone else, not for a gallery, just for me. It wasn't a portrait in the traditional sense. Not posed or polished, no carefully curated smile. Just a woman standing in a field of broken frames, holding a paintbrush like a weapon. Around her, the outlines of faces fade into the wind, blurred, unfinished, distant. And in the center, her, unedited, unbothered, unafraid. I called it reclaiming the frame, and I hung it above my own fireplace. This is the part of the story where some people expect reconciliation, a tearful call, a belated apology. But the truth is, that moment never came, and I stopped waiting for it. I stopped craving an invitation to a table that never had a chair for me. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stop asking to be included. Sometimes you draw your own circle. And sometimes, just sometimes, you sit alone in the light and realize it's enough. People assume revenge is about destruction, but this wasn't about burning down the house. It was about building my own, with clean lines, real walls, and portraits where no one goes missing. When I host dinners now, they're small. Friends, chosen family, no manipulation, no favoritism, just presence, just love. I don't overcook or overspend. I serve wine from local shops and homemade pasta. We laugh loud. We talk about politics and art and grief and healing, and no one edits anyone out. Not long ago, a distant cousin reached out. "I heard what happened," she said. "Honestly, good for you." Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd felt the blade of the family's selective memory. But I might have been the first to say, enough. Anecdote. After I got back my house, I started hanging my own photos. No editing, no erasing, just a life fully visible. Sometimes revenge isn't thunder or fire. It's paint. It's silence. It's living your life in full color. In the end, I wasn't erased. I was just waiting for the right canvas. And now, I'm the artist.